Welcome to SermonLink, friends. Good to be together as we turn to our passage today from the Gospel of Matthew. As you can see, we'll be in the 4th chapter. And this is a significant place in the Gospel story in Jesus' narratives because it is at the beginning of his ministry, and what's happening here sets the course. It lays the foundation for what's going to come, and in a sense prepares Jesus to do his work, to take on the mission of being God's son, God's one, sent into the world to usher in the kingdom of God, as Jesus refers to it. So we're turning here, and also for us it's a significant time because this is the passage that connects to the first Sunday of Lent. Today, actually on Wednesday, as I'm recording this and sharing it with you, it is Ash Wednesday, so it is the beginning of 40 days of a spiritual journey toward the celebration of Easter, and that 40 days is something we're going to be listening for in our passage today. So it all goes together rather nicely, and I invite you to hear the word with me, and then we'll reflect on it just for a few moments together. Beginning in the 4th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." And then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you do not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again, it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." And again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. And he said to him, "All of these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." And Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited on him. As I say, it's a dramatic passage, and it's one that begins or leads us more deeply into this important season of Lent that is just now beginning. So what is it about Jesus' experience in those 40 days of the wilderness that can connect to us and be helpful to us in these 40 days of our season of Lent? Well, let's look at the passage and have it guide us here. First of all, what takes place right before the reading? Sometimes that's a good approach when we study the Bible, to ask, well, what happens immediately before the reading we've just heard? In this case, immediately before, in Matthew's Gospel, Jesus is baptized. And at his baptism, he hears a voice. It's God's voice, we know from the way it's told to us. That divine voice saying, "You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased." And so Jesus' baptism becomes an event of identification. It makes clear who Jesus is. And then we pick the reading up for today, and that Spirit that so filled Jesus at the time of his baptism and identified him as God's Son is the same Spirit now that appears to lead him into the wilderness. Why? To be tempted. So right there, we learn something very valuable in our own experience of faith. When we are identified as connected to God, in this case, Jesus as the Son of God, and in our cases as children of God, then immediately that places us in situations and in contexts out of which we experience temptation. Why is that? Well, if we weren't identified with God, if we didn't connect ourselves by way of relationship to God, then no troubles, right? There'd be no temptation. Why would we care? The fact that we do care, the fact that we do so intentionally at least we're invited to do so, identify the fact that we belong to God, in the sense Jesus is identified as the Son, and we are identified as God's people. What follows then is temptation. We start to then hear the voices that are counter to God. We feel the pull of those powers that beckon to us to turn away from a life that's centered in God. So it's ironic, I suppose, but it's so deeply true that the more we affirm our relationship with God, the more the temptations can weigh upon us. How did Jesus face that temptation? Well, it says here in this passage that he fasted for 40 days. And so what that tells me is Jesus began practicing saying no, so that when the moment came, he would be ready. He would already have within him the capacity to recognize where he should say yes and where he should say no. His fasting, in other words, saying no to food, feeling that physical hunger, strengthened him spiritually to say no when it would really matter. And that's something that's valuable for us to learn in our own spiritual lives. We can practice saying no to certain things and also practice saying yes, so that when the moment presents itself in our lives, we're ready. In a sense, we've kind of been there. We have the tools needed to both discern and then respond in ways that are faithful. This season of Lent, the 40 days that are given now to us, can be that for us. What can we practice? Well, we could practice reading the Bible daily. Some say yes to that. We could practice praying daily in ways perhaps that are new or more intentional in our lives. We could practice serving. We could practice taking on projects that connect us with those who are in need, giving of ourselves in ways that we don't normally do or usually do. And we could practice worship, coming to worship more regularly, making a commitment week by week at the very least to gather with God's people and to be involved in worship. So these are just a handful of ways, and there are others where we can take on a practice spiritually that prepares us to be ready when it counts, to discern where we say yes, and especially in this case, where we say no, and how that can then even ground us more deeply into a life with God. It doesn't come easily. It just doesn't come automatically. It takes some practice. And so I'm inviting you to join me and to find those ways in your own life and faith where you can practice what it is like to be faithful, and that then prepares you and me in a deeper way to live out the faithfulness in the world. Hey, I'm so glad that you're with us today. Help us to spread the word. Give us a share. If you like what you're hearing, give us a thumbs up, and that always helps us spread the word. Share it to your own personal page. That's a great way to kind of make the witness. And we look forward to being with you every week. Next week, we'll be back. Be with us for SermonLink then. For now, take care, and God bless, and have a holy, blessed Lent as you begin that journey.